Item 8.4, Parkside Park. Jennifer, do you have to recuse yourself?
Oh, yes, I do. I'm sorry. I'm so spaced out. I am going to leave the dais because I own property within 500 feet of this location.
All right, so here we're talking about the Parkside Park, and would also add there's private parking associated with it as well. And we're going to talk about two agreements. There's an agreement for exchange of property as well as public improvements agreement. There's a copy of this PowerPoint, a hard copy if anybody wants one right here. So first, the agreement for exchange of property. It's a two-party agreement between the city, and we refer to them as the doctors, and it's really Emery, PJ, and CM LLC. So we like doctors, it's easier. And the agreement relates to exchange of property interest to create a city park and private parking. There's no exchange of money between the parties. Exchange value is equal. The agreement also provides for termination of existing reciprocal access easements. The agreement also recognizes that both parties are, the property in their after condition is subject to existing utility easements for storm drain and water. Storm drain is the city facility, water is East Bay Mud. The agreement for exchange of property has a condition precedent to the close of escrow, requiring the city to approve a general plan and zoning amendments which are technical in nature. Currently, the agreement in your packet calls for a close of escrow by July 31st, 2014, but there is a need to reconduct a planning commission hearing on their recommendation to the council on the general plan and zoning amendments. That'll be going back to the planning commission at their meeting on Thursday, June 26th. And so the close of escrow would be pushed back to August 16th. This is a site survey map of the existing property. It's property along the north edge of Stanford Avenue between Hollis and Doyle Street. You can see the there are two parcels that are sort of landlocked there, parcel 1, parcel 2. Those are the two parcels that are currently owned by the doctors. And then what is identified as parcel 5 is all the property around it, and that is the city's property. And the doctors, the owners of the parcel 1 and parcel 2, they also have rights across all of the city's property, parcel 5, for access such that they can get in and out of the driveways that are on the city's property, maneuver and get into their parking spaces that are in parcel 1 and parcel 2. Likewise, the city has access easements across parcel 1 and parcel 2 because cars will cross over them to get in and out. So that is the existing configuration of the legal parcels as they exist today. In order to create the park and the parking, they're going to be an exchange of property. So the doctor's exchange parcel, which is the property to be conveyed by the doctors to the city, is this parcel 1. And so that's the existing parcel that's on the far west side of that prior map that I showed you. So the doctors will convey that parcel to the city. The city's exchange parcel, which is the property conveyed by the city to the doctors, is this area shown here. And it's the area that's sort of shown in dots that surrounds the doctor's existing parcel 2 that's on the east side. So the dotted property is the property that the city will be conveying to the doctors. And then the configuration of the property after exchange will look like this. So parcel A is the big, large parcel to the left along the west side, and parcel B is the parcel that would be owned by the doctors. You will also see that there is a sort of two hatched lines running east to west across the property, about 20 feet wide, and that's the area denoted where the storm drain and water main exist today. And so there's easements, existing easements that will continue to exist across the doctor's property and the city's property. As I noted, the city and doctors will also terminate existing reciprocal easements that burdens both parties' property. The current access easement accommodates, as I noted, vehicular maneuvering and circulation that needs to be maintained for the doctor's 41 existing spaces in its new configuration. So you can't just use the same amount of land area and stick it down and create 41 spaces. You have to provide some areas for them to maneuver. So while the size of the parcel to be conveyed to the doctors by the city is larger than the parcel that's going to be conveyed to the city by the doctors, the termination of the reciprocal access easement affects or benefits the larger city parcel to a greater extent, and thus the value that we've arrived at is of equal value. I also indicated that there is a need to deal with a general plan and zoning issue. So the existing general plan land use designation for the property that is out there today, the current general plan land use designation applicable to both properties is mixed use with residential. So here's your current general plan land use map, and if you can locate, I'm not sure I have a little pointer, but you can sort of see a green circle up there in the general vicinity of Stanford Avenue, and beneath it you can see that it's still with that sort of reddish, for lack of a better term, color, which denotes the mixed use with residential. So that's the current land use designation that is in place today. So at the time the doctors obtained their entitlements to put in their office facility in August 2010, and they agreed to the exchange of property as part of their conditions of approval, their property was designated mixed use with residential in the new 2009 general plan, and it was zoned MUR, mixed use with residential, in the interim zoning regulations. And so as a condition of this exchange that we're doing today, the doctors want to retain essentially the status quo. They want the existing general plan land use designation of MUR that's out there today for their property to remain, but they also want rezone the property back to MUR from park open space. So for the general plan amendment, there's no general plan land use amendment is needed or requested for the doctor's property. The general plan amendment as to the doctor's property that is needed is it requires a residential density designation be provided to the property, since that was not provided in the 2009 general plan. That was something that was overlooked. It's a technical amendment that needs to be taken care of. So that's what needs to be dealt with in terms of the general plan amendment relative to the doctor's property in the after condition. The general plan amendment as to the city's property in the after condition is to change the existing land use designation from mixed use with residential, MUR, to park open space. That's what the general plan land use or amendments are about. As to the zoning amendment, sort of 3 years after the doctors agreed to the land swap condition back in 2010, the city adopted a new zoning regulations in 2013, and we rezoned the city's and doctors' property currently designated mixed use with residential in the general plan to park open space. So The doctor's reasonable request is to rezone their property to MUR in a manner consistent with the general plan and thereby maintain the status quo as they understood it to be back in 2010 when they agreed to undertake this exchange of property. The other agreement that is before you is a public improvements agreement, and that's a three-party agreement between the city, the doctors, and Archstone. And Archstone is the party developing the housing directly to the north of the property for the park and the parking lot. And so that agreement provides that once escrow closes, and so the parcels have been reconfigured per the exchange agreement, that Archstone will have right of access to the city and the doctor's property to construct the private parking and park improvements. So once Archstone completes work on the south side of its most easterly building, so that's the part of the building that is right next to where the permanent parking improvements will be, they can commence the work. So the first phase of their improvements is to set up striping of the temporary parking on the west end of the existing parking lot that is out there. And they estimate we provide them up to 30 days to complete that activity. Once the temporary parking is set up and the doctors have located all their parking there, then the second phase of construction is that of the permanent parking improvements on the doctor's newly reconfigured parcel on the west end, and that should take up to 3 months to complete. The third phase of construction is after the permanent parking improvements were done, the doctors move all their parking onto the permanent parking, and then Archstone constructs the park improvements, and that should take up to approximately 6 months to complete. And the total work valued is $861,000, and that figure will be inserted into a provision in the public improvements agreements in Section 13 that requires them to provide performance and payment bonds to guarantee that the work is done and that they actually make payment to the people doing the work. That's a standard provision that we require on all projects that we do, is a bond for the value of all the work. So the current site utilization out there today, this sort of purple hashed area shows where essentially the parking is being utilized currently by the doctors, and then to the north of that line, between that sort of line and the property line of between the Archstone property and the city property is where Archstone is doing various staging activities in connection with constructing their project. The temporary parking, once they start, will be essentially shifted all to the west end of the existing parking area that's out there. There's no construction. It's really just a matter of restriping and making sure there's 41 spaces out there. So once that is in place, then Archstone will start construction on the permanent parking and park improvements. And this is a depiction of it. You see the permanent parking improvements on the east side and the park on the west side. And so with that, we're recommending that the council approve both of these agreements. And then, as I noted, subsequently, as a condition to the exchange agreement, there will be an item going before the Planning Commission relative to the general plan and zoning amendments, and then those amendments will come back to the council at your meeting on July 1st. The zoning is an ordinance, so that takes 2 readings. The second reading would be July 15th. I'll note that an ordinance second reading must be conducted at a regular meeting. After your July 15th meeting, we do not have another regular meeting until September 2nd. Escrow closes 30 days after that second reading. So if we're pushed back into September, we're now into an October closing period and sort of delay to bringing this project finally to fruition. So if you have any questions, I'm free to answer or
I just have one question, Mary.
Go ahead, Kurt.
In regards to the $861,000 cost that's being borne by Archstone, if a cost exceeds that $861,000, does the city have any obligation to pay?
No, that's just no, we're not paying for any of the cost of construction. And I will note that currently is just it's an estimate of what we believe it to be. We will actually see the actual construction contract, and so to the extent that dollar figure increases or varies from that estimate, the exact number is what will go into the agreement.
Any questions from council?
Nope.
Let's hear from the public. Anyone want to speak on this item?
Well, I will note just briefly, Ray Buddy, counsel for the doctors group, is here, and Darlene Kostafis, who's the representative of the doctors, is here as well.
Hi, I have a public comment. I'm Jennifer West of 5514 Doyle Street, number 9. So I know that I'm recused from this item because it's within a certain distance of my property, and yet I was not noticed of the Planning Commission general plan or the zoning consideration that they took. That was an oversight by staff, and so a number of my neighbors are concerned that they wasn't properly noticed, and it will be reheard, as I understand it, at the next Planning Commission. It's also a concern to me that it's a little bit messy to be considering a land swap now and the general plan amendment at another time because they're related, and I know that one is contingent on the other, but for the purpose of public input, I think it makes sense to consider them at one time, or at least to allow comments on both. And I believe a number of my neighbors are interested in this, but apparently didn't come tonight thinking it's going to be on the July 1st agenda, or was confused about the different items. I would like to say that if the zoning is to go back to the mixed use residential, which I understand makes sense, that's what it was when it was first approved or agreed to. My concern is that if at some point this property will be built on, because it's designated as mixed use residential, that actually it would mean a disconnect between the new park that's planned and the existing park, which is a linear park on the other side of Doyle Street. And would it make more sense to have, if there were to be a building at some point, to have it on the Hollis end and the park actually contiguous to the rest of the linear park on Stanford? I don't know that it will be built on. It's a rather small site, and it is required parking for the property across the street. But I'm just concerned about what that would mean further down the line, and what the purpose is to have a building or project approved on that spot. My main concern also is that we spent a lot of time and money on the park design, and that this land swap, I thought, was more or less complete so that we could do that design, and then to have it all thrown into question again is a little disconcerting in terms of the process, especially for folks who are interested in that. And my last question is, Archstone, I thought, had new owners, and I'm not sure if the agreement is with Archstone or with the new owners of that property. Thank you.
It's with Archstone.
It's with Archstone. Thank you, Mr. Biddle.
The new company assumed all their obligations.
Okay, listen to the presentation. This is the first I've heard of this, so I'm coming into this completely cold. It wasn't explained to me well enough, pardon me, why this swap is being proposed. So I have to presume it's because of the private owners, the so-called doctors, that they want it to happen. So if that's the case, I don't think that the city should be put out in any way, because it's not our idea, it's not to our benefit, unless I'm mistaken. And then I also thought I heard Mr. Biddle say that in this land swap, the city would get a smaller parcel of land, if I'm not mistaken. And of course that, I can't see how we benefit from a smaller piece of land in a land swap, and so that wouldn't work to our advantage. It just doesn't seem to be in our interests, unless everything I understood is not correct. I don't think that we should be entertaining this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comments?
Thank you, Mayor Asher and council members. I'm Ray Buddy, and I'm representing the doctors, the property owners. I won't take much of your time. I just wanted to say that staff was great to work with. Mr. Biddle, Mr. Kaufman, Mr. Bryant, your staff did a great job. This was a complicated issue because of our trying to work out all the details of the 3 different parties and some issues that slowed down the project across the way. And then I think, as the council knows and as staff knows, it wasn't the doctors who wanted to do this land swap. It was the city desired the park, and so as a condition of the parking, when it was placed on this property, they were asked to agree to cooperate in a future land swap, which they agreed to do, and that's why we're here today for this. So I'm just here to answer questions if you have any questions, and beyond that, I'm going to say that I think tomorrow the one thing you'll hear about tonight's meeting is that you approve the dog park. So you'll get a lot of, I think you'll get a lot of kudos for that. Okay. Any questions for me at all? Thank you.
Comments from council? Questions?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Go ahead, Nora.
Clearly, the general plan has designated this as MUR, and it's clearly in the interest of the city to move forward and see that this project is completed, specifically that the park is completed. And I think there's been a few stumbles along the way. I'm especially concerned about the lack of noticing to the neighborhood, and I'm really concerned about that, Charlie, because I envision that we have a process that one of the first things and one of the most important things in the whole planning process is if people in the area are supposed to be notified, that's done just pro forma. It just happens. So we hope this never comes up again, that a glitch like this. But having said that, we're all looking forward to having this little park here with the dog park that's included in it. And I'd like to see this move forward, and I'd like to move the resolution, the first resolution, and I'm looking for support.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
I actually would have liked to have seen the process work better. I think that the public, if they're going to weigh in, might have something to say about mixed-use residential designation. They might have something to say about the density on this site. And in some ways, I don't know that we're doing anyone any favors by making this decision ahead of that. And so for me, I'm not going to vote in support of the resolution because I feel like it should have been done differently, and that we need and should respect and prioritize public input on this. Mr. Biddle?
I just want to be clear, you are not making any decision as to the general plan or the zoning this evening. That will come back to you at your July 1st meeting, and you can get into those issues as to height and density based on the recommendations that you'll get from the Planning Commission from their meeting on June 26th. So I want to assure you that you're not prejudging any of those actions by approving this tonight.
Yeah.
Call the question.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember West is recused. Vice Mayor Atkin.
Aye.
And Mayor Asher.
No. Okay.
Move the resolution agreeing the...
Title only?
No, this is
Oh,
a
this is the-
resolution. Move the resolution approving the project improvements agreement.
Oh, I see. Okay. 8.4.2.
I'll second that.
I'm going to vote against this as well. Anyone else opposed? Nope. Okay.
I'd call for
Roll call vote?
roll call vote
Okay,
on
let's go ahead and
this.
do that.
Councilmember Brinkman.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Councilmember West is recused. Vice Mayor Atkin.
Aye.
And Mayor Asher.
No. Okay.